All right, greetings, greetings, greetings. I hope y'all having a good day. Here I go. The powers that be are watching me. Hope everybody's having a good day. Rep your city. I'm representing Chi-Town. I'm representing the Chi. We got it popping in Louisiana with Shreveport, with the Queen Kathy holding down the throne. We got Fresno in the building. Roster Man doing it big. Y'all already know we got Cali in the building. He representing the whole California, especially the north. He represents Oakland. He represents San Francisco, Fresno, all that. Yeah, everybody, shout out to everybody on Facebook. I'm representing Chi-Town, everybody on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick. We got the ATL in the building. And you know what it is. You know what it is. Black Americans with foundational in the front. Shout out to all my new mods in the building helping me keep law and order over here. Much respect to our mods. More power. I made you a mod. I don't know what happened. I got to go back and do it again. I don't know why I don't see you. I'll go back and fix that. Yeah. I don't know what happened. I made you a mod, more power. I go back and fix it for the next live. Oh, so here I go again. The live I did last night. My phone's been ringing, ringing, ringing. Sometimes family members watch me. So my family member called me. A couple of them. My son, Dad, you got to do another one. I didn't even know about all that. Well, you know, I'm just now teaching my children a lot of information that I know. Information is dangerous. And do not send your babies to school with certain information. When your children are going to school, reading, math, science, keep it there. Let them get grown. Let them get out of college before you give them certain information. Certain information is dangerous to young people because they don't know what to say, when to say it, or where to say it. So I did not arm my children with information that would make them stand out and one day not come home. So you have to be careful with information. Now today, here we go again. I want to go more into details about the 60s because the 60s represented FBA. And most of these scholars or whatever you want to call them, they like to go back to the 80s. They like to go back to the 80s and overlook the 60s. Now, got a lot of young viewers. So, and what I mean young is anybody under 40, because I'm old as hell. So anybody under 40, you know what I mean? So run those likes up, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I had a young lady, trying to holler at me. I said, how old are you? She said 42. I'm like, well, you're kind of young. She's like, what you mean young? I'm 42. I'm like, listen, trust me. Trust me. You're young. Deacons for self-defense. Exactly. Exactamundo. The deacons for self-defense. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. They don't get any highlights. And they don't get much coverage. But for sure, the deacons of self-defense were very strong in the 60s. And that was FBA at its finest. And the FBA, the whole foundational Black American mentality has been here a long time, many, many times. I can cover a lot of eras. I'm just picking the 60s because it's closer, right? It's closer. Now, as far as Black immigrants go, I feel like the problem with Black immigrants is the lack of respect. I feel like they don't have good hospitality. Because how do you come into a place where melanated people put so much on the line and made it for you to be able to come, and you come and show no respect? We're going to get into all of that, especially when I come back and talk about the 80s. We're going to get into that because that was a problem in the 80s. That wasn't a problem in the 60s. But yeah, much respect to the deacons. For self-defense. Robert Hicks, you the man. So I'm going to cover this piece by piece, and right now I'm doing the 60s. And the reason I'm doing the 60s is because the 60s is an area where I was here. I was born in 1958. So I can give you some firsthand accounts of the 60s that was very influential in my life. Right? So I can give you an account of the 60s because I was born in 1958, meaning, you don't know much. But with the news media, the radio station, WVON, and the news, things like that, you're able to see some things, but you definitely become aware by 7 years old. 7, 8, 9, 10, you know what's going on. And I've been into music a long time, so I was really into buying records. I was buying records probably since I was like 8. So around 8 years old, I would, back those days it was beautiful. So young children, we could run to the store. We always went to the store. 5 years old, kindergarten, you're not outside too much. Go to kindergarten a half a day, you kind of in. Your parents might let you go out, but somebody's got to watch you. You're riding your little tricycle. 6, you're outside a little more with the other little 6 years old, first grade. But 7, you're out there. You're out there. Second grade is up. This is back in the early 60s. So by 7th grade, it's all the way up. You figure I'm born in 58, I started school in like 62. So 64, 65, I'm out there. You're out there, you're 7, you're 8, second grade. By the time you get to 3rd grade, as a young boy, back in those days, we were programmed to pay attention to our fathers and our uncles. This was a part of how we were raised. That changed dramatically just in 12 years. So if you missed from the mid 50s to like 68, if you wasn't at least 7 years old by 68, you didn't know what was going on. You was a baby. So you missed everything. You missed that whole thing. You came, and there was some of that was still there, but not all of it. It had changed a bit. Okay. So it had, once you get out of that little area where I was born, it had changed a bit because I'm born in 1958. And to catch that vibe, you got to go back. So you got to be born 57, 56, 55, 54 to catch that era. If you're born too many years after that, you're in another era and things did change slightly. And so my life in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, things was much different by the time I get 17 or 18. Those is two different worlds. So some people, you was not in that same world. Things were changing rapidly. And my era is the babies of the Great Migration. If you were born after, too long after that, if you wasn't born from 54 to by like 63 or 64, you missed it because they had already migrated. And now they just live there. It's two different vibes from the ones that came right from down south and had babies, and those that was here for a while that had moved and then had babies, or those that were still in the South that had babies, because their lives changed too. Maybe I'll talk about that one day. And so the 60s was basically the FBA era, but we didn't know that's what it was. But when you look back at it, it was. Because the 80s was like a Pan-African era. Okay? This is when you get all the rappers with the Africas on and all of that. But in the 60s, it wasn't that. It was different. So I remember I was 10 years old, and I'm listening to WVON. And at that time, as a little boy, in 1968, little boys, we only had one hero in 1968. In 1968, the little boys, grade schoolers, I got a whole video on it. Go check it out, Street Media. I did a video on it last night. So in 1968, the little boys, we didn't have a lot of heroes yet because there was a great migration and blacks had just came up from the South. And so through my lifetime as a young person, Black Americans in Chicago especially, Detroit, Chicago, places like that, we had one hero. He was a superhero. He was bigger than life. And I remember one day the radio came on and I heard some drums come on. I heard a dude say, with your bad self. Say it loud. Dun, dun, I'm black and I'm proud. And I went crazy. I went crazy. Mama, she gave me some money. I ran to the record store and I bought this record. And I played this record 2,000 times. At that time, I was in Juanita Hamilton's dance classes that I would go every Saturday. And she would put little programs together. And then once a year, we would go to Dunbar High School over there on King Drive. And we would perform and do 2 days, like a show. So we would do a show for 2 days at Dunbar High School. And Miss Juanita Hamilton, she had the boys, she had the girls, she had the little boys and little girls, like we 9 and 10, and we do our little act. And then she had the bigger boys. Then the bigger, she had all ages to the adults. As she put on these recitals, these dance recitals. And, one example is to be like the little girls our age, they have on their little leotards and their little stuff with their little fringes, and they have their little guns on their waist with their little cowboy hats. And we got on our cowboy outfit with our little play guns. We come out, shotgun, dun, 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 shoot them before they run down. We do our little dance. And she kept the boys She kept us dancing masculine and the girls danced feminine. Because, back in these days, they was real strict on that. And so when I heard "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," I went the next Saturday, took the record and told Miss Juanita Hamilton, "Can I do this at the recital?" And she said, "Yeah." Boy, I was happy. I went and practiced it. I learned all the words. I was 10 years old. I learned all the words. And I came out there and did the whole song with no music. I memorized the whole song with no music. The only problem is I was standing out far and they started clapping and I kind of got starstruck and the curtain closed behind me and I couldn't figure out how to get backstage for a minute. So they thought that was funny. But yeah, it was my first big pro-Black experience. At 10 years old, I got to do "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud" with our superhero. So our superhero was James Brown. By the time I got to like 8th grade in there, 9th grade, we had 3 superheroes. James Brown was Godfather #1, soul brother #1. So when they say soul brother #1, they really mean that. He was soul brother #1. Our next superhero was Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali. And our third hero was Dr. J. These were the 3 most famous Black men for people born in my age that grew up in the early 60s. Through the 60s and the early 70s, nobody was bigger than them. Nobody. And when I say nobody, I say nobody. But #1 was James Brown. In other words, the person that Muhammad Ali and Dr. J wanted to meet was James Brown. Everybody wanted to meet James Brown. And this is foundational Black history at its finest. But we didn't know we was foundational Black America, but this represented foundational Black America. This did not represent Pan-Africanism. Okay? This represented power to the people. Black is beautiful. Black power. You see, foundational what? Black. Black, foundational Black. There were no Moors. The Moors were nobody. The Moors were nobody. The Moors were nobody. So all that Johnny come lately trying to come in and alter our foundation and our history, get out of here with that. Especially when you start considering all the damage the Moors did to Black people globally. I ain't going to go there, but on a live debate, I'll do you dirty if you were Moor. Because you got some of the most horrible history in Black history globally, the Moors. Horrible history. I don't know why nobody would want to be a Moor. Make it make sense. You might just be a hater. You just might got that vibe. So Black power was a big thing when I was a child. And what we wanted to do is, if you in like the 4th grade, you want to do like the 6th graders and the 8th graders, the big boys. You want to dress like them. You want to look like them. You want to do everything like them. And these are Black people from the Great Migration, so they had just came to the North. They had just come to the North. So this is really foundational Black American history that always gets overlooked. That's why I'm covering it. Because we didn't know to call ourselves foundational Black Americans, or we would have. We would have called ourselves foundational Black Americans if we knew that term. But we really didn't know that term. But it's really the history of our people. There, me and my sister go with my father. We was really in it. My father coming up from Decatur, Alabama, ended up getting a job driving a bus for CTA, making really good money. This is us still in an apartment. And within a year of this picture, we had got a new house. And so this part of our history, people are trying to bury it. Now, this was a very important part in our history because our people coming from the South had been shamed by oppressors and were told you were ugly, Black was ugly, pull your lips are too big, and all this. So our parents, my parents, and our parents and grandparents were damaged. I was born in 1958. My parents, my grandmother, my mother's mother, and them, they were damaged from all the abuse that they've been going through since they was born. They were born into segregation and hate. So when you get to 68, 69, like that, you get to 58. We can start there. 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65. Black people that came to the North was fighting shame. They was ashamed of their hair, the texture of their hair. They were ashamed of their skin color. They were ashamed of them lips. So you would often hear people say, get out that sun before you get too black. You would hear people say stuff like, pull your lips in. You would hear people say stuff like, comb your nappy hair. And so the whole Black is beautiful thing was foundational Black Americans accepting how we look, our skin color, our heritage, our way of life. So Black is beautiful became a big saying. Black power became a big saying. I'm Black and I'm proud became a big chant. Big. And the young people pushed it on our parents. So I remember running home and saying, Mommy, can I get a natural? It was called the natural look. Later it became an afro. I'm giving y'all foundational Black American history. It was called the natural. Later it became the afro. And the younger generation pushed it. And I remember running home because they would take us to the barbershop, cut all our hair down. We used to get our hair cut like this and even lower. I remember running home telling my mother, Mama, can I get a natural? And she's like, no, you ain't going to comb it. And, I always say, how did she know I wasn't going to comb it? I ended up not combing it. I used to tease her when I got dreadlocks. Mommy, you said I wasn't going to comb this. She said, boy, shut up. But anyway, Mommy, can I get a natural? Mommy, can I get a natural? Finally, she broke and let me get a natural. And boy, I cannot tell you how excited I was when my mommy said I could grow a natural. This is the 60s. This is foundational Black American history. Because I wanted to grow me a natural. Yes, I did. Because the big boys had naturals, and I wanted to do what the big boys was doing. The group that's younger than my parents. And the ones younger than my parents had naturals. I wanted to look like these brothers. I didn't want to look like my daddy. My daddy was older. These was the young dudes. They the ones we outside seeing walking around. So we wanted to, my generation pushed that. And once I got a natural, then my father got one. He followed me and my generation. We made it in style. But it was the older boys that pushed it. So I'm born in 1958. The ones that really pushed being proud and Black was born like 1956, 54, 53, 52, and 51, and 50. From 50 to 56 are the soldiers, are the kings and the queens of foundational Black Americans once we migrated to the North. The ones built up, the ones born in 1950 to 1956, those are the ones. They were standing on business. They was standing on straight business. Those is my OGs. They was the ones fighting at these schools when they was getting attacked, racial attacks. They the ones made it so you all could walk around. They don't get no credit. That's why I'm doing this, to give them credit. Of course, my parents get credit. But the ones that really put the muscle in it, they don't get no credit. The Blacks that made it so you could walk around here was born 1950 to 1956. Fact, my OGs. They the ones that did all the fighting. By the time I got old enough to go to high school, the smoke had already settled. I didn't have to do all that fighting. When my parents took me out of public school and sent me to a Lutheran school, and I went to Luther South, which was white and Black, there was no smoke because the OGs that were seniors and juniors, they had already got that straight. All I had to do was come in and hold the line. Right. Your mother's born, your mother and them wasn't playing none, Janetta. None. Your mother and them the reasons I could walk the streets and didn't have to fight. They did all the fighting. That's a fact. Your mother and her classmates and the ones older than her, that group, they did all the fighting, especially here in Chicago. They did everything. And up at Finger, up at Morgan Park, up at Harlem, up at Hirsch, at all them schools, Gage Park, all that, they the ones, boom, 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 boom. They was the ones that did all the fighting. All we had to do was just come through and hold the line. That's all we had to do. All we had to do was hold the line. That's it. That's all we had to do. Make sure you hit those like buttons so more people know we over here. Share and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Make sure if you don't hit the like button, a lot of people won't know we over here. That's how you let everybody know, come on over. So now that group, 1956 back to 1950, their hero was Malcolm X. Malcolm X was their OG. So they used to listen to everything Malcolm. This is why the Nation of Islam was really worried about Malcolm, because Malcolm could have grew way bigger than the Nation of Islam. Compared to Malcolm, if Malcolm would have been out there solo, the Nation of Islam would have been like a 10 compared to a 10,000. Because the Nation of Islam was limited. It could only go so far. Because Black Americans was Christians. They was Baptists and Methodists. And they wasn't going to take up no Islam back in the 60s, late 50s and 60s. What are you talking about? So Nation of Islam wasn't never going to go that far anyway. I remember riding in the car with my daddy, and I think on the Sunday or one of them days, Elijah Muhammad would come on WVON on one of these stations, I think WVON. As soon as it would come on, my daddy would turn it off. Elijah talking on. I don't nobody want to hear that. My daddy would turn Elijah off as soon as he come on. I remember him turning them off because they was Christians. So that was the fear that Malcolm was going to go for the public instead of for the religion. They wanted to keep Malcolm under the religion. They didn't want Malcolm to go to deal with the public. Malcolm made a mistake telling Elijah's business. That's a whole nother video. Malcolm should have went to the old man, shouldn't have kept Elijah's business to himself, and should have just asked to step down, and he would have got Elijah's blessing. He would have got Elijah's blessing. He could have just left and mind his business, but he started gossiping and made a mistake. By the time he wanted to separate and help us, he had already told and started gossiping, and he was marked. Because anytime you're in the system and you're going against a system that don't like Black people, it's just like in the streets. If I'm out here doing illegal stuff and I'm with a crew doing illegal stuff, and the police want to bust us for doing illegal stuff, and then I start beefing with my crew, somebody in my crew I'm doing illegal stuff with, now I'm sandwiched between the crew that want to get me and the police. And Malcolm sandwiched himself between the FBI and the Nation of Islam. How can you win like that? You're out of there. Because you got ops on both sides. That's a whole nother video. My point is, he was the hero to them. So my OGs used to go and they would put Malcolm's speeches on cassette tapes, but mostly records. They had Malcolm X speeches on records. And they would go to houses and just listen to Malcolm all night. And he was like a superhero for the young Blacks. Okay? This is real foundational Black American history, you all. So Malcolm was like a superhero. So when you had somebody like Stokely Carmichael, let's take him for example. When you have somebody like Stokely Carmichael was riding with MLK. They unalived Malcolm, but MLK was still alive. Stokely, who got Trinidadian roots, but he might, you know what I'm saying? But back then, he might as well have been foundational Black American because nobody really knew about Trinidad, Jamaica, and all that stuff. But anyway, so now Stokely and them, they all studied Malcolm, but he chose to really deal with MLK. So when they unalived MLK, that's when Stokely snapped. And that's when he became a Black Panther. Because he's like, I should have listened to Malcolm. Because Stokely felt like Malcolm was over here basically a revolutionary. I chose to deal with the man that wanted to do boycotts and get things done in a peaceful way. And y'all then unalived him. That's when Stokely flipped, when they unalived MLK. Because they got rid of Malcolm first. So that way, when they got rid of MLK, there was nobody to run to. If they would have got rid of MLK first, everybody would have ran to Malcolm, which would have been a problem. So the powers that be, orchestrated everything correctly. But my point is that Malcolm X was really the spark for FBA even up to today. The whole idea of foundational Black Americans standing on their own. Malcolm X is is at the forefront of it. Now, people will say, well, there was this brother back here and this brother back there. The reason I give Malcolm more credit than brothers before him is because every time you live longer into the media, you become more powerful. So even though we had powerful brothers in the past, we didn't have the media. So then they could only be so powerful because nobody knew who they were. Malcolm came in at the beginning of the media push that we see today. So Malcolm was able to get more media than those before him. And that's what made him more powerful. Just like you see today with social media, you see how brothers can just get so much power quickly because of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X. There's a bunch of places where you could be seen. So Malcolm gave birth to these brothers. These are Malcolm X students. Facts. These are Malcolm X students. Malcolm X birthed the Black Panther Party without even knowing he was doing it. And this is really the situation when it comes to Foundation of Black Americans. Right? This is the history of Foundation of Black Americans. Foundation of Black Americans is just Black Americans with the word foundational in front of it. It's simple to remember. So foundational Black Americans is Black Americans, but foundational Black Americans, because to be Black and an American means you Black by our skin color and you American citizen. But an African can come who is a Black person, and if they get their citizenship, they would be technically a Black American. So foundational Black American is to distinguish Blacks that been here since the country started from Blacks that are immigrants, because they would technically be Black American citizens. So we are distinguishing ourselves as foundational Black Americans, meaning we the ones been here since the Mayflower. We the ones fought in the Revolutionary War, in the Civil War, World War I, World War II. That's the difference, that we've been here. And we're the ones owed reparations. Blacks that fight against foundational Black Americans are enemies and are also not smart, because why would you want to come on our turf of 50 million strong and become an enemy? Not smart. You don't have the numbers to come here. This is to my African brothers from Caribbean. Listen. You don't have the numbers. You don't have them. Adults and FBA is the same thing. So we're not gonna get petty, right? Are we? Adults, FBA is the same thing. Adults is going nowhere because we're never gonna call ourselves descendants of slaves. We were in slavery, but we are not the descendants of no slaves. Our people were not no slaves. Our people were enslaved. So adults is a horrible title. Horrible. It's not going to go nowhere. Nobody's going to use a title that says slave. Nobody's going to use slavery in a description. Slavery is not a word that I'm going to attach with my name. Period. I'm a foundational Black American. We did more than just slavery. We had freedmen over here too. We made many inventions over here too. We've done all type of things since slavery been abolished. So that name is ADOS is going nowhere. That's going nowhere. That's going nowhere. If you don't want to hear the truth, don't come over here. ADOS is going nowhere. Nobody's going to call themselves ADOS. It's going nowhere. They might as well call themselves adios, because basically it's not going nowhere. We want a name that represents strength. We don't want no slave that I'm a descendant of cotton pickers. But to each his own. But me and my family, we foundational Black Americans. We ain't no descendants of no cotton pickers. Right? One thing I'm not doing no trick debates. I know all the games. And I'm not going to ruin these people's conversation debating with no brother who's rude. What's your name? Michael McCoy? You're rude. The fact you think that you're so important, I should stop talking to these people. You're rude. And y'all, mods, when you see Michael come over here, if he's just asking any questions or off, just block him till the next day. Don't block him permanently, but just keep him out of here. Maybe he'll go away. Unless he comes over and want to learn and participate, mods, keep him out of here. Michael, keep him out of here. Because every time he comes like I don't know, some type of weird negative energy. Every time he comes with the same negative energy. You know what I'm saying? Which the internet allow you to do that. You know, outside you do that. You keep irritating brothers. Y'all know how that goes. You can't do that face to face. Keep irritating. You know, people gonna take that the wrong way. And we're like this dude, right? So, foundational Black Americans was really strong in the 60s. Super strong in the 60s. And y'all, we not banning nobody. Just keep blocking them. They'll get tired of being blocked. And if they not adding nothing, they'll eventually go away. Let them waste their time. Let them log in. Let them come over. They get online. Just block them till tomorrow. I'm not banning anybody no more. I'm just block them. Okay, Mod, so just block them. You see they come, they trying to disrupt the conversation. If you see me ignore their question and then they ask me again, block them. Till tomorrow. We got all the time world. Let them waste their time. And so Malcolm really created this whole energy. Right? And this is really foundational Black Americans before we really knew the title. Because at this point, we're searching for an identity. That's why we were saying Black Power, Soul Brother. We was trying to find an identity coming out of colored and Negro. African American was a TV news term, so we didn't use that. We mostly used Black American, and we just stuck with black people. And so we was Black Americans, and all we did is just put foundational in front of it. So for those people that's confused about foundational Black Americans, take the foundation off, you won't be confused. We've always called ourselves Black Americans, and all we did is put foundational in front of it. It's not really difficult, okay? In the 60s was that era that Malcolm X kicked off. That transferred down to my era, on through until you get in the 70s when we get in the economic era. I'm not going to talk about the economic part in the 70s. And so the 60s is really one of the strongest turning points and historical points for FBA. It was when a lot of young Black men decided to stand up. Brothers like UEP Newton. You see what I'm saying? All the great brothers that came that wanted to speak up. Brothers like Fred Hampton. Brothers like Mark Clark. This is the history they don't want to teach. Strong brothers that don't get no props, like Lil Bobby Hutton. Rest in peace to Lil Bobby Hutton. If you don't know some of these brothers, look them up, y'all. And this was the era where the queens was stepping up as we begin to identify ourselves, like Tupac's mom, Afeni. So this is when the queens was stepping up, stepping into the arena. Kathleen Cleaver. This is a real powerful point in foundational Black American history. Some real Black power type energy. Angela Davis. You see the hair represented, we want to be ourselves. We want to be ourselves. We are not going to be ashamed of our hair. We're going to be proud of ourselves. We're going to be proud of the color of our skin. We're going to be proud of how we look, our heritage, what we are. This is the biggest moment in foundational Black American history. Everything that you're trying to do today comes from that era right there. And they laid all the groundwork out of what we have to do for our community. They did things like feed the community. They had breakfast programs. They believed in self-defense. Defend yourself and feed yourself. Feed yourself. Feed yourself. So we had strong programs, medical programs in our community. You see the babies there learning how to feed their own people. You see the food bags there. Look how many bags of food they had ready for foundational Black Americans to come pick up. This is the history I want to show you. Look at all that food that all you had to do was come and pick it up. They just wanted to paint the brothers just with the guns. They didn't want to paint the brothers and the sisters and show the work they was doing in the community, feeding the babies. Yeah, look at all that food. Look at all that food that they was providing for the community. This is the great history of foundational Black Americans that they don't want you to see. They don't want you to know these things. Look. Where's this history? Where's this history from them packing that food and then putting that food outside ready to go? Where's the history of them feeding the babies? You tell me. Why nobody talk about this? Make it make some sense. I just figured you all should see it. The brothers was working hard in the community, making plans for food, for health, for self-defense in the 60s. And now we've come back and we're really finishing up the work that they started. It's all connected. Now we put a title on the people that's doing this. We put the title on it. Foundational Black Americans. And we got to connect to the 60s and continue that work as foundational Black Americans. You see, under the Trump administration, they're trying to put us back in the same situation where we're going to have to do this. You see, they cut off the food stamps. This is what we would have to do. Go out and raise the money ourselves and feed our people ourselves and do for ourselves. And every time we do for ourselves, money starts getting missed out the system. And then they come and trick us and beg us to get back in. Even to the point now, they're going to come out with a cashless society to try to trap you. So you got to go to the computer. You should reject the cashless society, keep all your cash, and make that cash still have value between us. When they tell you turn your cash in, don't turn it in. Stack a whole lot of money, and then we trade it amongst ourselves and let it keep the value. Because once we let them put us on the computer system, it's going to be over for us. We can't let nobody control how we eat and all that. And that can't be done. I just want to touch on that. You're going to have to think about what all these brothers and sisters really stood for. And they was young, they was babies. So that's why they was making so many mistakes. They wasn't none but college-age students. Which if you got children, you know your children ain't got it together when they the college age. You know your sons and daughters don't really have it together until they get in their 30s. So these was really, really young people that was out there trying to make a difference at college age. Young people trying to make a change. And we had all type of things going on. The government was doing all type of things to try to stop it. Okay? The government was doing all type of infiltration and all type of funny style things to try to stop what we was trying to do at that time. We got to keep this history alive. We can't let this history go. And you got to pay attention to the good and the bad of what was happening. Because the same dog that'll bite you in the morning, will bite you in the evening, and they'll run the same play. They'll run the same play, and they'll send all these people to distract FBA, and they'll send all these people with all these questions about FBA. Soon as we try to do something positive, people you never see until you try to accomplish something. But we had all different brothers still trying to be on some type of strength. We had strength. And even though these brothers wasn't dealing with the world, they was ready to back us up under any circumstances. They was ready to back us up. They just couldn't be active as a non-for-profit religion. That's it. So Elijah was trying to tell Malcolm, we can't do certain things as a religious organization. We can do it, things if we have to. If it hit the fan, yeah, but if it don't hit the fan, we got to play it cool. So Elijah was all about, we just need to be prepared if something happens. We don't need to say nothing, Malcolm. But Malcolm knew that the people needed a voice and the people needed somebody to go when they was getting locked up and stuff. And when we would get locked up and abused, Malcolm would show up. So we need to look at this history and start thinking, when are we're gonna have to start preparing our own health care, our own food, our own security, our own transportation. That's what we're gonna have to do, y'all. As foundational Black Americans, we're gonna have to secure ourselves. And we're gonna have to look at what the brothers did in the 60s, and we're gonna have to update what they did in the 60s to fit what we're going through now. So study the 60s. Study the 60s. Because we're going to have to take the things that happened in the 60s and we're going to have to upgrade those things because that was foundational Black American to the core. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. Right? You understand? So that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to really think. You seen that sister in Texas having a baby and they kicked her out and made her have it in the car? Make you want to be a midwife. We're going to have our own hospitals. We're going to have to get some of these abandoned buildings, buy them, go in there and clean them up and sanitize them and make them hospitals. Make them medical centers. And we're going to have to be willing to stand against the government if we feel like they are illegally using the powers of the government to hate on us. If the government becomes a rogue and you know that they're intentionally trying to sabotage, you have a right to defend yourself and go against that government if that government is taxing you and trying to have taxation without representation. Period. You're going to have to stand for something or you're going to fall for anything. It just is what it is. Because a scared man can't win at all. And we got to be standing for Black power. Black power meant Black power, meaning the ability to control your destiny. That's what it meant. It meant your own stores, your own hospitals, your own schools, your own electricity and solar energy. Black power. A car has horsepower, right? So if you get a car and you have your own automobile, that's black power. But nobody really never explained what black power was. Black power is not anti-white. Black power is black survival and doing for yourself. They cannot make doing for yourself illegal. You have every right to do for yourself. Just because you're in America do not mean you can't do for yourself. We have to do for ourselves. And we have to stop just going to war for a country that don't want to do nothing for us. Them days is over. And all that pump faking, like they gonna do something, I don't believe none of that. I don't believe they gonna do nothing. They can miss me with all of that. We're gonna defend ourselves if we have to. Period. And we're going to do like all the greats told us to do. We're going to do like George Jackson told us to do. Yeah. We're going to do like Fred Hampton told us to do. We're going to do like UEP Newton told us to do. These are the students of Malcolm X. You understand? So thanks y'all for watching. Support the channel. Stay positive all the time. Yeah, George Jackson, look him up. He was the one that Angela Davis, they said Angela Davis smuggled something to him in prison. So the sister Angela Davis got caught up with George Jackson. They said that she snuck him a pistol into the prison. And all of that is very interesting information. You know, that's why I'm bringing it up. They said this sister they tried to call her a communist and all that. So they said she snuck a pistol into him. You understand? That's what they saying. You feel me? That's what they were saying. Right? Because they was afraid of him because the brothers in prison was affiliated with the Black Guerrilla family. Okay? So they was afraid of those brothers because we had organizations that was out here willing to defend us. So look up Black Guerrilla Family and look up the BLA, the Black Liberation Army. It's more than just the Black Panthers. This was the next step. These was the brothers that said the Black Panthers weren't willing to go far enough. They wanted to go further. So if you was like in a BLA or something like that and you got locked up and you was in prison, then you, instead of being in a gang, you'll be with the with the Black Guerrilla family. That make sure you get respected in prison, to help you fight the Aryans in prison, because it was white supremacists in prison. You understand? So this is what gangs are for. So y'all be hating on gangs because y'all don't know what gangs are for. Gangs aren't for the streets. Gangs are for the county jails and the prisons. That's what gangs are for. Gangs are not for the street. Gangs was formed to defend yourself in jail against the guards and against other races in jail and in prison. That's what gangs is. And you keep the order on the street, so when you get arrested, you already got a built-in army. You already got the Crips. You already got the Bloods, the GDs, the BDs, the Vice Lords, the Black Stones, the Four Corner Hustlers. You already got an organized group that got codes and laws and rank and file. Because you're dealing with a system that'll just lock you up for no reason. Then you need an army. So you get arrested in Chicago, you're going to get locked up. They're going to come up to you and say, what you is? You say, I'm this. They're going to say, okay, they over there. You're going to say, I'm that. They say, they over there. You're going to go over there. They're going to ask you got shower shoes, you got cigarettes. They're going to give you what you need. All right, so y'all stay positive. That's a little foundational Black American history. And you all just a generation taking it to the next level to be able to come up with the identification. So it's history making that you all came up with the identification of what we represent. You see what I'm saying? So you all are the ones that's coming as represent the identification of what all of this is about. So your role is very, very important. Very important. Because you're the one finally identified and gave us a final identity on what we standing on. I send this to everybody. Support the channel. CashApp, Venmo, PayPal. The whole 9 yard super chat. You know what I'm saying? And stay strong. Victory.